Hello, Chicagoland, and welcome to another live CAN TV 21 interactive call-in talk show with Violence Interrupters not-for-profit organization. And I'm your host, Mr. T.O. Hardiman, and I'm really glad to be here again. And with me today is one of my colleagues, associates, and good friends, Miss Alina Smith.
Hi.
I'm glad you're on the show again, all right?
I'm glad to be back.
All right, good. So today what we plan to talk about, and for everybody watching, feel free to call in 312-738-1060. A lot of things have transpired since the last time we got a chance to get together and pretty much inform the public on what we're working on. Mm-hmm. So what I would like for you to do, Zerlina, for starters, tell us a little bit about what you've been working on and what Increase the Harvest is all about in Westside Democracy for America.
Oh, wow. Well, since the last time I was here, I'm thankful to be back. Increase the Harvest has been very active with Violence Interrupters. Of course, you know that I am the vice of Violence Interrupters, and I'm the founder of Increase the Harvest. So we've been putting boots on the ground with making sure that our parents are aware of the Curfew Awareness Month, which we were hoping to push for the month of July. We've been actually on the governor's boot tails with protesting him, making sure that we ask those questions that most of our people and elected officials are scared to answer: why we don't have a budget and what's the next steps if our schools don't open for our children next year. We've been everywhere. If you know Zerlina Smith and T.O. Hardiman, we've been everywhere. We've been trying to make sure that our streets are safe for our children, our seniors, and everyone that walks them. Education is a must in our community. Without quality education, there's nothing when it comes to our community. So I'm grateful to be here once again, and I'm doing a million and one things trying to make sure that all our children get a quality of life in our communities.
Oh, good. That's a whole lot there.
A whole lot.
As you know, on Juneteenth, Governor Rauner had some type of event scheduled at the DuSable Museum. And what's important is that Juneteenth is really something, an event that's celebrated by African American people based on the fact that the abolition of slavery. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of deep. A lot of people in the community activist arena were not happy or pleased with the fact that he had actually scheduled and he was inviting people out to the event. But to make a long story short, the event was canceled, okay? Mm-hmm. So back on the violence prevention front, though, and everything we've been doing as organizers and as community leaders, what do you think are going to be, what are the next steps, or what do you think that's really needed in an extreme way to help combat some of this violence on the streets on a higher level? Because it seems like every weekend, Zerlina, we have a massacre like they had in Orlando. Mm-hmm. So even though, you know, you had 49 people killed in Orlando, you had 53 people shot, but the reality, every weekend in Chicago, 10 people killed, 50 or 40 people shot. Mm-hmm. So what more do you think, well, put it like this, what is missing in the strategy to help stop the killings in Chicago?
What's missing is that the city and the state keep funding these pop-up artists to come into our community at the end of the day who know nothing about black people. I mean, at the end of the day, I love Father Flagler, but Father Flagler needs to stick to what Father Flagler does best, which is organize in his church and his congregation. At the end of the day, we need our own people out here on the streets who are from these communities, who live in these communities, who walk these streets. We need the people that are actually engaged by just being out there. It's no such thing as not being involved or not knowing anything, because we all know if I sit on my porch and I see Pookie doing something, you know, I know Pookie did it. It's up to me if I want to stand up and say either Pookie don't do it no more or call the police. And with Father Flagler, with June 16th, it was not enough African American leaders that were doing anything, and I don't fault him for taking the lead and wanting to have an event, but yet and still T.O. Hardiman had an event for June 16th. We have so many things going on, but the little black people, and why I call them little black people, is because they put the white men and white women or white organizations on a platform which is just overwhelming, disrespectful to our African American people. Because once again, we had an event going on and it was not publicized as much as Father Flagler's was, and we did things in our community that was just mainstream for the people who walk those streets.
All right, good. So what it comes down to is that we, in our community, once again, we have to step up to the occasion and make things right, because we're losing too many young people. No, I'm raising my son. He lives in the Austin community as well, and he's 18 now. And I'm proud of the fact that he kind of made it through. He just graduated. He's about to be sworn into the National Guard. But he was he's a grown product of the Austin community. And I'm proud of that. But at the same time, there's so many young men that haven't got the chance to even go to the service, the National Guard or the Marines, the Navies, or whatever the case may be, because they were stricken or shot down by violence or senseless act of violence. So on behalf of Violence Interrupters, everybody that's watching, our staff have already mediated around 20 conflicts during the last month, the month of May, that could have led. Well, I'm just talking about for that 1 month. It's more than 20. I'm talking about throughout, but just for that 1 month. And for the first 2 weeks of June, our staff have mediated around 6 or 7 conflicts. And the reason I don't get so caught up in big numbers is because what happens is that a lot of people try to tout these big numbers. My thing, if you can save a couple of lives, you're doing some good work.
You save one life.
Right, if you save one life. Well, I try to do something different by saying save a couple lives, because everybody's talking about saving one life. So now let me put you on the hot seat for a minute, Ms. Alina. When they talk about these community activities and marches and barbecues, basketball games and all that kind of stuff, are those type of activities effective when it comes down to stopping violence, or should those activities be seen more like a way to promote stopping the violence? Because there's 2 ways of looking at it. Is there any substance behind those type of events as it relates to a correlation in reducing violence?
It's 2 different things. One is a Band-Aid for the problem. When you have basketball events, most of those events are just something temporary. You have to remember, once those events are over, these kids still have to go to the same streets, back to the same communities that have a high violence crime. When you think of the czar, which Cook County Commissioner Richard Boykin, which is mine, number 1, we were advocates for his Cook County Commissioner czar position. We also assumed that someone from our staff would have gotten that position because of the work that they do. But at the end of the day, that was not what had happened. If you don't have people from communities, and I always tell you this, that live in communities, there is no way violence can be stopped if you bring in strangers, people who do not live in the community, but people who work in the community, who just transition from 9 to 5 back and forth on our streets, cannot be effective. You cannot run a program for kids who live in the ghetto, in the inner city, however you want to label it, and think that that's going to stop a bullet. Because when they leave your program, and statistics has already proven it in Chicago alone, that once they leave a program, they're most likely to get shot on the way home.
That's sad. It's really sad, because it happens time and time again. I've heard many stories about how young men just got finished playing basketball for peace and they get shot on the way home. We have to put some safeguards in there. So for those who are watching tonight, you can call in 312-738-1060. If you want to call in and comment about the high levels of violence in Chicago, or what we're doing as far as on the social justice arena, in the social justice arena, that's important work as well, because which the shutdown of the DeSable Museum event, that was a big success. And also there were some other events, like before that point, where the governor went out to a church on the south side, and he was met by a lot of people that were not happy about his policies. That's what it's coming down to, policy. So what's in the pipeline as we talk about policy, Sister Zerlina?
What's in a pipeline? Oh, wow. Well, since Tio wanted to bring up, yes, we were the lead on the Bishop Dukes bringing Governor Rauner to his church last Sunday. And we believe that policy can only be changed by people. We have to let these elected officials know that we elected you in to do a job for us. We shouldn't have to beg and plead with you to have meetings with us. We shouldn't have to beg for basic programs, for basic dollars, for basic things that a community needs. And if this governor does not pass a bill, it's been 2 years, people, remember this, it's been 2 years. And it's just not the governor, it's the Democrats and the Republicans. If they don't pass a bill at least for education, there's a strong possibility, I don't care what nobody tells you, that these schools won't open. And if you think that they have something else lined up, you are sadly mistaken. In the state of Illinois, your child can be 16 years old and drop out of high school. They don't offer anything extra.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to take a call in a second, but I was already informed earlier today that there's a chance that there will be no summer school. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, yes. There's no budget. There is no summer school programs. Most after-school programs have been cut. And because of this, my daughter is a CPS student, and I'm an advocate for public education. I am in the process of transitioning my daughter to a full scholarship private institution, because I know she'll get those quality after-school programs that a child who lives in the highest murder rate community in the country should deserve.
Cool, so let's take the first caller here. We'll take the call. Yep.
Hello.
Yes, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, thank you. I was listening to you earlier talk about how people outside of the community may not necessarily be equipped to meet the needs of the community they're trying to serve. And I was hoping that maybe you could expound upon what exactly you think the community needs, so to speak, to move forward in a more positive direction.
Okay, yeah, good question. That's a fair question too, young lady.
Mm-hmm.
What I believe that the community needs, I'm just going to tell you from a more organizing standpoint. Right now, there's a big need for about 5 to 10,000 African American men, women, and families to organize on a higher level in order to go and talk to these young guys out in the community that are involved in high levels of shooting people and violence, because it has to come from the family. It has to come because everybody's tried some of everything, and people shouldn't even be on the news anymore unless they have a bona fide solution to stopping the violence. Everybody says, economics. People say it's a lack of jobs, it's this, it's that, it's all over the place. But what we're saying is that African American people, the same way our ancestors stood up during the middle transatlantic slave trade, once they got onto the plantations here in America, our ancestors stood up because they wanted to make sure that we were free. Mm-hmm. Right now, we're turning on each other, and our ancestors are probably rolling over in their graves because it shouldn't be this way. But just like back then, African American people have to stay unified and become one unit to deal with this epidemic of violence. Because if we can stop the violence first as a people in our own community, then we can start working on a higher level, start working on resources, start working on owning and operating all the businesses in our community. But it's going to take a family affair. I just want to make that clear, because I'm one of them proponents that always makes this statement, Alina. You're not going to stop no killings in the black community until black folks unified, period. Right. I'm not talking about turning against the system. We tried every approach in the world. Here it is, we are people. We don't own and operate. Let's say we don't even own and operate 70 or 80% of the businesses in our community. Nope. So the black dollar basically goes around once or twice in our community, then it leaves out. But instead of the dollar going in our community at least 20 times before it leaves, right? We don't own them businesses. So them brothers out there selling narcotics, the brothers involved in the illegal gun trade, instead of them being involved in these here criminal activity, they need to own the liquor store in the corner that might be making as much money as they make in selling drugs, okay? They need to own the nail shops. They need to own the dry cleaners. They need to own the grocery stores and the gas stations. That's part of the solution, so young men can grow up and see businessmen in their community and businesswomen. I just want to add that. So that's one of my solutions, young lady, when you called in. So Zelina may want to add to that as well.
Wow. My solution and why I made that statement is because I believe that if you don't walk these streets from AM to PM, you really don't have any idea what's going on. If you're not sitting on the porch or trying to close your eyes at night to hear gunfire or to hear somebody screaming, running down the street, being chased, how can you be effective? And I'm not saying that the people aren't coming in equipped with anything, because most of the organizations that come into the high crime and distressed communities are fully funded, and they hire people from outside the community to run these programs. So how much information do they know? Do they go off statistics or numbers that they find online, or just from the research that they've done? Because most of them don't get boots on the ground, which means coming to talk to the people that's out there on a daily basis. Not just me and Tio, you have a collective group of individuals on the south, the west, and the north side that are fighting just to make sure that their neighborhoods are safe. So when I say that it's people in the community that can be effective as well, but they lack to give the small grassroots organizations or the people that have been out here fighting for the basic things that we need to even fund us, to even look at giving us the opportunity, even just by hiring us to run these programs that they want to bring to our community. I don't want anybody to ever think that I'm down in anyone that wants to come help our community, but I think we need to start within our own communities ourselves, because we don't need a Band-Aid anymore. We're past those Band-Aid stages. We need to do like and I'm not that old, I'll be 39 July 1st. When I used to walk down a block, everyone on that block knew me. Now everyone lives on the block, they go in their house and they close their doors. They're not taking that time to get to know their neighbor. My neighbor has been living on the block for 55 years, and she say, I've been there 5 years. I know more people than she know in the whole community. And that's only because me and my daughter is out there engaged. So if you're not engaged in our community and just not living in our community, it's just like the dollar that Tio talked about. if black dollars come into our community, it stays at least 6 hours. That gives those business owners time to come in, open up their business, and close their store down, and then our money's gone. They don't contribute to block clubs. They don't contribute to the community, but we invest our money in them. Black communities are the only communities that you see in the city of Chicago that don't have a real business district. And when you think of a business district, I would love to just patronize people of my color, because when I go to the Hispanic neighborhoods, that's what you see. When you go to the Asian American neighborhoods, that's what you see. When you go everywhere else in the city of Chicago, there are business districts, there are art districts, there are just a flourish of heritage information that you can get where you can't even get African American history in our own community, let alone in our schools.
Right. Now, I appreciate that was a real good response, young lady. So with that being said, people can still call in, area code 312-738-1060. And this is my website right here. You can go to tohardiman.com to find out more information about what I represent. And you can reach out to me on social media, T.O. Hardiman. That's T-I-O Hardiman, Hardiman. Now, recently, I just looked at the news the other day. There's two things I want to cover before we, we still have a little time here. Mm-hmm. So this is the thing. I write for the Huffington Post every now and then. Mm-hmm. So I put a post up about 2 weeks ago stating that the police cannot stop killings in Chicago. It was not a criticism of the police, Alina, but it was just pure facts. Mm-hmm. Because every weekend you still have the same levels of violence taking place, and it's been that way for decades. Mm-hmm. So the reality is, how can we help the police become more proactive when it comes down to stopping the violence on the front end? See, that's very important, because right now a lot of people are making a good name for themselves off the tragedies of our people mm-hmm. being slaughtered on the streets. So my proposal is, how can you stop something you don't know it's about to occur, number one? And number two, the police have been in a response mode, which means that once a person breaks the law and does something, to hurt somebody, then they get involved. Mm-hmm. So you do have a lot of good police officers out there. I don't want to knock the police department, but I just wanted to kind of begin a dialogue mm-hmm. about the fact that, because when you look at the news, every weekend they're going to deploy more officers in this area, that area. They're going to go after the illegal guns. They're going to go after the gangs and all that stuff. But none of those strategies in the year 2016 appear to be actually paying off. Mm-hmm. So we as a people, once again, have to step up to the plate. Now, the Orlando massacre that took place, nobody wants to talk about it, but it appears that law enforcement, and I'm not going to mention the name of which law enforcement agency, because that's at higher level agencies, Alina, they dropped the ball on this guy. Yeah. This guy was on their radar, and that goes to show you once again a good example of how they cannot really stop it before it happens. And you have to have boots on the ground to make sure. See, when you stop it before it happens, nobody goes to jail, nobody goes to the cemetery. Okay? So that's one of my points. And then another point that's unrelated to that point, Alina. I noticed, I looked at the news the other day, former Governor Quinn is circulating a petition to add a referendum to the state, to the state, for the mayor to be
term limits.
Just two terms, and then that's it. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts about that? I think that was pretty admirable of our former governor. And then I have to give him credit where it's due, because he's actually going out getting signatures himself. So what are your thoughts about term limits for the mayor, whoever the mayor may be?
I'm all for term limits. At the end of the day, I think that the former governor is doing an excellent job. Honestly, if he would have just signed those budgets when he was in office and not holding them as hostage for our people to get the basic services that we need, thinking he was going to get reelected, then he wouldn't be out there pushing those petitions for Rahm or any mayor to get a term limit. At the end of the day, we need to have term limits on every elected official and hold them accountable. Okay. And I don't know how many times I'll make this statement. If we vote people in and we see that they're not doing anything for us, we need to vote them out. It does not matter what their education is. It does not matter who their friend is. Everybody has the right to run for these seats. If you want to run for a political seat, reach out to T.O. Hardiman and myself, and we'll start doing civics classes, anything, civil disobedience. If you want to be a part of something, be an activist and protest against this injustice they have us going through right now. The summer's coming. Violence is still on the rise. The police has no clue how they're going to maintain it. They don't want to talk to me, T.O., or the people who are actually out here at 3 o'clock in the morning in the front line trying to help do their jobs. So at this point, it's going to take a village, and getting Rahm out is the leader of the pack.
That's profound, I must admit. All right, so that's what we're talking about today, dealing with the violence and a few other political, agenda. So what the former governor is doing is trying to make it a referendum on the ballot.
I
that's
think
coming
he's
up.
trying to do something. I think he might be trying to run for another seat. I don't see him just doing it out the kindness of his heart. But at any token, I mean, at least he's stepping up and he's doing it.
Yeah, at least he's
he
stepping
made
up.
enough money off of us to get out there and do some footwork because I believe he gets a pension as well, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not-
Okay, well, I'm quite sure he gets a pension.
Okay, so with that being said, so with the violence, so a few things we have planned. About a week and a half ago, I organized a peace summit in the Austin community, and I plan to meet with the commander in Austin and the alderman pretty soon to organize another type of session, a nighttime session over around Central and Madison, and just hit the streets and go out and do some mass outreach to them young brothers out there and them potential shooters. Because my thing, if we can stop it before it happens, that's the main goal. So hopefully the young lady is still listening to us talk, and hopefully we answer the question in an appropriate way. Because like you said, a lot of people get monies per se, big money, millions of dollar grants and everything, and funding to what you might say implement a program in the African American community, but at the same time, people work from a distance still. You need people that are actually out there on the ground that knows how to get the job done. Just when you withhold resources from people, it's hard to keep moving forward.
Yeah. It's
So-
it's a long hill,
Yeah.
and I tell anybody leaving on this thought. I am Zerlina Smith. Remember this: when you see bulldozers or X's on your building, crime is not happening inside those buildings with X's on it. Every time they tear down a building on your block, your value of your property depreciates. So if you see any buildings on your block with an X on it, please reach out to your alderman. Try to save it. Try to purchase it. Do whatever you can do. You do not want land just sitting there because we can't develop on blocks, but we can rehab properties on our blocks, okay? So remember that thought, and let's start taking back our communities and building what we know used to be called home, a community.
Well, my motto in life is, Alina, is if you ever get knocked down in life, it's your duty to get right back up, because if you stay down too long, you may not have the power or the strength to get up. So you got to get down. You know, I take a lot of my strength and a lot of my inspiration from people like, believe it or not, LeBron James is a good example. Speaking about the finals, LeBron, he said he gave that championship finals his blood, sweat, and all of his energy and his heart, because he wanted to bring that championship to Cleveland. And you don't win championships, you have to take them, okay?
Yeah.
And that's just on a note here today as we talk about the multitude of issues.
I believe that all those games are rigged. There's no
Right.
way they came back with the strongest team who beat them in the finals and the playoffs and everywhere from 3-point. I don't even want to
No,
talk
they
about
were
it. I'm
down
just mad.
3-1.
I'm just mad.
Well, LeBron just
I
does,
don't-
he took over. He took over like he should have, because he's the king. Long live King James.
Okay. Well, let's ask Michael Jordan to come back to the city
Yeah.
of Chicago, since we all walk around Jordan athletic wear, and donate some money to some real programs for the summer and after schools, because CPS public schools are badly in need of academic programs and funding. So let's think about every athlete that comes from Chicago who gets their money and leave, because there are children that still look up to those retired people or basketball players and football players who do some things, but we're asking now that you come back and do something on a bigger base and stop looking to those big organizations who already have what they claim we need, and they do nothing with it. So come back and help our children, because we want to see our children grow up.
That's very important. Like I say, for the people that are watching the show tonight, we want to thank you all for tuning in. This is Violence Interrupters, not-for-profit organization, and it's all about helping to change mindsets and behaviors associated with violence. And Violence Interrupters, we're on the move. You know, I have some people reaching out to me now from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it's unfortunate we haven't got a chance to hire more people in Chicago, but the program is up and running in Springfield, Ohio. I'm negotiating with some people in Dayton, Ohio as we speak now. So the Springfield, Ohio team will be in Chicago next week for a training. So I plan to train them and take them out on the streets of Chicago so they can see firsthand how we go about taking care of our business in Chicago on the west side and the south side. So get ready, Chicago. Violence Interrupters, we're on the move, and we plan to continue to just beat the pavement until we can just raise the bar.
That's
Because
right.
I truly know for a fact that we can stop the killings on the front end as long as we have the manpower out on the streets, and we have what you might say the right type of people. See, you have to hire and train the right kind of people, because if you hire and train the wrong people, you still won't be as effective.
That's right.
And one thing about Teal Hardiman and Violence Interrupters and Increase the Harvest and West Side Democracy for America, we have a proven track record. See, I'm not just talking. We've been around. When I was overseeing a particular violence prevention program in Chicago, there was a 25% reduction in homicides in the city at that time. And then just want to add to that, even in some of the communities that I used to oversee, we actually had 80% reduction in shootings and killings in the Woodline community at that time. And not that I want to take all the credit for it, but we definitely took care of the business. So I don't normally do this, so we got about 30 more seconds. I'm going to let you wrap us up.
Oh, he's so sweet, considering I'm supposed to be the co-host, but I'm actually
That's
out
right.
getting things done in our communities while the boss man sits here. Let's just make this clear. If you really is serious about having a safe summer, let's all get involved. Let's make sure that our children are safe, our streets are safe. Let's make sure that the city of Chicago does not tear down one more piece of property in our neighborhoods. Let's make sure that we start investing back in our own, which is loving ourselves and loving the people that come from our communities. And we want to say thank you, good night, and stay safe.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.